Welcome to the Stoned Heen View, a podcast series which interviews a range of sport club representatives and leading professional sport club personnel during the COVID-19 period. We find out what these people are doing during the current health crisis with some of our most popular sports seasons postponed. This week is episode 53. I'm your host, Mark Heenan, and also coming soon, obviously we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, we've got the business edition. Even though we're a sport podcast that's in an audio and video format, we're also doing a business edition. So we're going to talk to businesses as well during this sort of COVID-19 post period with a bit more levels of engagement coming up. And today, as I mentioned, we are a sport podcast. So that's a little thing that we're doing outside of the sport podcast, is that I'm going to speak to a special guest who was announced as the local football club senior coach of this club in late 2019, before the long wait to coach his first official senior game in 2021 on Good Friday, April 2. Believe it or not, he actually celebrated his first win on the weekend in round 2 against Portarlington. But he's also a multiple premiership coach. He coached Banyule to a flag in the Northern Football League, and also coached Woden to an AFL Canberra premiership. So it's great pleasure to welcome the current Ocean Grove Football Club senior coach, Pete Davey, to the Stoned Heen View podcast for episode 53. Thanks for joining us, Pete.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the intro. Nice to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Not a problem. The opportunity to coach your first victory in round 2 over Portarlington, considering the long wait and the pre-season and obviously COVID last year, you must have had some happy faces, not only yourself, but, you know, just to get that winning feeling and knowing that process through Ocean Grove to sort of, I wouldn't say just rebuild the club, but to be involved what you've done, and you must be extremely happy for the boys to finally celebrate a win.
It was unreal, mate. Yeah. So we had a lot of young guys playing on Saturday, and it's funny. I was actually going through our team with Pete Smith, our president. We had 10 guys that have played less than 5 senior games, experience, and just to see their faces to win a game of senior footy was fantastic. We've had a lot of people come back to the club from a supporter perspective, some ex-players, and just seeing them happy and they're invested in what we're trying to do, and to see them enjoy themselves and celebrate the win was fantastic.
Obviously, you know, it kicked off on Good Friday. You had the sort of bonanza game down at Torquay, and I suppose considering that you were appointed in September 2019, and I know you've probably spoken about this with media interviews with other outlets and talking about sort of, you know, the long wait and being motivated to coach, and did you think it was going to happen? But, you know, that's almost, well, it's a year and a half since you were appointed as coach to coach your first official game. I mean, I don't know if you'll go down in the Guinness Book of Records as someone that has been appointed and then their first coach is 18 months later, their first senior game. But even though you didn't get the points against Torquay, just the feeling that you could officially coach your first senior game sort of post-COVID must have been just like a bit of weight off your shoulders.
Yeah, I think there's a few of us in the same boat going around. I was sort of pinching myself on the Thursday night before Good Friday because it was sort of like, this isn't really happening. I was sort of waiting for an announcement from the government or somewhere to say that there's been another outbreak, and then for AFL Victoria to come out and say, no, we're not actually going to go ahead. We're going to hold off for a month, and so to actually get out there and play, yeah, it was fantastic. It was a huge weight off everyone's shoulders, I think, and now we can just actually get out there and enjoy what we're doing, what we've been training for.
And the game, that first round, to see a lot of fans back watching football, Good Friday, obviously late afternoon, twilight, good weather down at Spring Creek Reserve, knowing that the fans were back. I mean, you would have coached in different leagues in different states, obviously in Canberra, but also in Melbourne, and used to finals football, so you're probably used to seeing those sort of crowds. But for a sort of a home and away season game, to have the crowd that they did down at Torquay, it was almost like a mini final.
Yeah, I think it was great for our young guys to play one of the better sides in front of a decent audience. Yeah, I think I might have said it to you actually a little while ago that I reckon it was probably worth 6 games of senior football experience to play in front of that kind of crowd. But it was awesome just to have, you know, people haven't been able to do anything for 12 months. And we thought when the season started, there'd be no one allowed to come other than players and maybe some volunteers to run, you know, things that have to get done. So to have, I don't know how many people were there in the end, but just to see the cars and see people wandering around was, yeah, you're right. It was like a finals atmosphere, which we're really privileged to be part of.
Now, obviously last year, there was an article that was published about, you know, you're saying about the, you know, admitting that the shutdown of the Bellarine Football League season, a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, made it hard to build relationships with players and staff. And, you know, obviously there was that sort of bridging connection at the start of last season. You know, you played like sort of game simulation type matchups, particularly, we saw that setup that you had with Maribyrnong Park, and then, you had some other activities, not just football-based activities. Obviously, Dean Casamento has done a wonderful job in terms of the performance coaching side and, doing, we've discussed, when you had sessions down at the beach. But when that all sort of stopped last year, like, how did you go mentally with that? I mean, obviously, were you kicking little footies with your son when you're at home, or like, how did you sort of get your footy fix? Was it just purely the AFL, or watching old replays, or scrolling over BFL footage from previous years just to get an idea what the next season would look like?
Yeah, I honestly really struggled with it, and I think after a couple of months, I withdrew completely. Like, I barely watched any AFL football last year. Probably had some moral issues about the season going ahead when other things couldn't go ahead, but it just didn't have the atmosphere without people there. The real upside for me was spending a year with my kids. That, I do a lot of travel for work, and to have a 5-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl who I was able to see every day while they were at home, while I was at home doing this sort of stuff for work, I'll never get that year back again. So that was the real upside. The downside, obviously, we sort of talk about those relationships that are hard to build at a footy club when you first come in, and you're getting to know players, and then suddenly you have to talk to them only over the phone or over Zoom. It wears thin pretty quickly, and we gave it a go for a couple of months. We're checking in once a week by video, and just as the numbers started to dwindle off, and I don't think it's because they were losing interest in what we were doing. It's just that it was just a real grind to get in and talk about football, and we knew we weren't going to be playing. So I think in the end, we kept a group going for whoever wanted to turn up, but we didn't put pressure on people to front up and do things like that.
Well, the first person that we interviewed as part of this series, going back to, apart from our introduction, was Dean Casamento in episode 2. And one of the reasons why we wanted to get him on board was that he was already very futuristic in the way this platform was going. And I suppose even dealing with his own clients, with his own business. And I'm sure that there's a lot of other people that were using that space, that online platform, whether it was Zoom, but just sort of connecting with people. And, he's a real motivating type of person and inspirational in what he does. Were there players that would come to you, and obviously I'm not here to name names or anything like that, but were there players that came to you and, just told you, look, I'm really struggling with what's going on at the moment. I'm a people's person. I need to be with people rather than you using, technology to talk to others, and particularly around football? A lot,
yeah, yep. And look, that's not restricted to a football club. I think that was just society in general, from 17-year-old footballers to guys in their 40s like me that really battle with not having that day-to-day base contact, and being able to go and have a coffee and put your hand on someone's shoulder and that sort of stuff. That was a real struggle for everybody, and not just our club. I think every club, sort of every coach that I've spoken to has sort of said the same thing, that it was really tough, and players, some players brought off a duck's back, but there was a number that really struggled through it.
I want to take you into, like, not only when you were appointed, but the feedback that I got, particularly from the club, covering the club over an extensive period of time, was that you were very organised with, what session you were doing. Everything was all organised, from when you got appointed to up until what supposedly would have been, the normal start date of, last season. But obviously it got delayed, and then that final call was made, hey, we're not going to go with the season. Too many concerns over not just the pandemic, but getting the season off the ground. With that recruiting side, obviously, did you feel that in some ways that if you were recruiting a player for 2020, that I'm not talking about their body would have aged just another year, but they might have got to freshen up as well. I mean, how did that affect you recruiting for the following season? Because you would have done a lot of planning for the 2020 recruiting, and then that didn't go ahead, and then you recruit for 2021. And I don't really want to completely single him out because he's not part of the club now, but Andrew Jarvis is supposedly coming back. Then you think, oh, we've got a ruck, and then we don't have a ruck, and we do, but we don't have him at the club. But how does that impact you? Did you, like, with general recruiting around recruiting players, not from the season that was 2020, but the following season, which is this year?
Yeah, look, rucks are obviously hard to replace. It's sort of, when you put your cornerstone of the team on paper, but you sort of put your ruckman down, you work around that. So, but that said, we only want people that want to be at the club. So we only want people who want to buy into the direction that we're going. We had a few guys move on, and we wish them well. And we're really investing in the guys that stuck around and want to be part of what we're doing. And we've got a great young ruckman now in Kobe Anand, who's played really well the first couple of weeks of the season. But from a recruiting perspective, we didn't want to go too hard last year. We had that crop of under-19s that had come through from the 2019 flag, and we wanted to give them every opportunity. You know, we knew that there was some senior players moving on, and we just didn't want to go on and bring in named players. And, you know, when we've got this good group of kids, young men that are talented and deserve their spot if they do the hard work. So that was our focus last year. Probably to go back a step, I probably looked at my tenure here as being a 3-year phase, where first year was about getting the culture right, second year was about pushing for finals, and third year competing to hopefully try and win it. Just with the year that we had last year, I didn't want to write that off. Like, I think we kicked a lot of goals from a culture perspective, and we're able to look at the list and yeah, you know, another couple of guys moved on, and we were able to look at where our gaps were, and we're able to target needs from a playing perspective, but most importantly needs from a culture and leadership perspective. And so we targeted guys that had been leaders in their previous clubs, and also targeted friends of friends, rather than getting people into the club who didn't know anybody. You know, sort of got a theory that good people know good people, and we put that on our players to reach out to their own networks and bring some of their friends down to the club, and that's worked really well for us.
And it's important to mention that some of those players, and you mentioned Kobe in the ruck, they also had a season playing in the Northern Territory. So from that experience as well, and I'm not sure, you might be able to update me on this other player because I'm not sure where he's at, but also Max Sutton. So what's Max Sutton's situation, and also those players that went into state as well to play? I mean, Harry Walker comes to mind, even though he's not at the club this year, but he went to New South Wales and he was the captain for last year. Well, he was appointed captain for 2020. So there was a couple in that boat that they went into state and played. Because they couldn't play in Victoria because of COVID. Yeah,
Kobe, Joshy Lang and Max Sutton, we got them a gig at Palmerston Magpies up in Darwin. So they were very fortunate. They've had a great year. Josh and Kobe have come back, and I think Max has enjoyed the Darwin laid back lifestyle, so he's staying a little bit longer. So we'll see. He may be back for the season. He may not be back. We'll sort of left that up to him. We're not going to put any pressure on him. Harry was a different case. So Harry actually moved to Sydney to help his uncle's business. He had a great work opportunity to go up there. It was just fortuitous that he was able to tie football into that. And we were hopeful that he was going to come back, but I think deep down we probably knew that the work and the support that he's giving his uncle up there was more important, and we wish him really well, and we think he's doing a great thing up there helping his uncle.
Absolutely, and he actually featured on his podcast 7 episodes ago, and just talking about that move, playing at North Shore Bombers, and he's enjoying that, and he was down at the first game over Easter, so that was good to see him there. Now we go back to you, particularly on that coaching path. Now, obviously you've got a career, I suppose, in finance, and also to the opportunity, because you actually, I think you're about 32, and your playing days were coming to an end, and you wrote to clubs. You'd moved to Canberra about, an expression of interest. That doesn't always seem like the conventional way of doing things, and perhaps you wanted to see opportunity there for yourself, but also you moved into state and went outside the comfort zone. I mean, how glad are you now that you made that leap of faith to not only follow your career, but also from a football perspective to go into state and pursue a dream to coach?
It's funny because it wasn't actually a dream to coach. My wife and I went up there. I had a work opportunity to go up there for a few years, and we just thought this is a great opportunity to, you're right, go out of our comfort zone. So we moved up there, and we're up there for about a year, or a bit under a year. And Canberra's a pretty tough place to break into it from a social perspective. It's a very, very different town. And I spoke to a mate up there that I've become mates with, and he said, look, you've got a football background, why don't you get involved in a footy club? My body is a mess. And I said, well, I'm not going to play. I might write to some clubs and see if they're looking for an assistant coach or something. Here's my experience, this is what I've done. If I can help somewhere, let me know. And it might be a great opportunity to get to know people. And one of the clubs that came back to me, which was Woden, which is who I end up coaching, said, look, we're actually looking for a senior coach. Would you be interested in applying? Kind of laughed about it with my wife. Going, have a look at this. And anyway, so I'll have a go. And anyway, fell into place. And that's how the senior coaching career, I guess, started.
So in terms of the opportunity to coach, and that was Woden in the thirds competition in Canberra, is that right?
It was the seconds back then, the second Division 2.
Were you into your seconds? How many seasons had you coached up there? Because I think it was 2015 you coached a premiership with Woden, is that right?
Yeah, so that was the second year. So first year we got through and we lost a prelim to Ainsley by 2 points, and that stung. And then the next year we won it. Yeah, we beat ANU University in the grand final, which was
so
cool.
Where is AFL Canberra attracting a lot of players? Because I know with sort of the Northeastern Football League, particularly, with mention of Harry Walker playing at North Shore, but also other teams, in particular in those competitions, is there a pool of talent that is based in Canberra? Because, I've just recently been up there in the last week and they've got, obviously other football codes to contend with, whether it's, rugby league and rugby union and, there's obviously soccer as well. And, you've got AFL. So was there much of an internal talent pool in Canberra?
Canberra actually is a footy town. You've got league and union, obviously, but there is a lot of Aussie rules footy heads there for some reason. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because of the public service that a lot of Victorians or South Australians have moved to Canberra for work. A lot of the existing clubs, they've just got players that turn up year after year and just play. So there's not a lot of, you don't get a lot of transient players that come in and out or change clubs. They tend to come to a team and stay at that club. So it's a great club culture through the Canberra competition. But I guess when players move to town, there's an opportunity to pick up and recruit that way. But recruiting isn't a big thing up there at all. It's you work with what you've got and you try and make that work.
Does it also become a recruiting ground for you, particularly when you leave Canberra and then you go back to Banyule? Incidentally, you played there from what I understand, and go back into that environment. Then you've obviously coached at Bacchus Marsh as well. Do you keep in contact with a lot of those AFL Canberra people if they've moved down to Victoria and they're looking for a new home?
I certainly keep in contact. Yeah, I got some very close friendships now with the guys up there. To be honest, nobody from Canberra has moved down.
Except for you.
Except us coming back. Yeah, like I said, it's a very tight-knit place. So once people are there, they tend to stay there. Certainly if guys were coming back, then we'd definitely have a chat to them. But yeah, it's never arisen where someone from Canberra has actually come back to Melbourne or Victoria.
And how would you assess those competitions in terms of the Bellarine? I mean, obviously the Northern Football League you coached, you up in AFL Canberra, and then, particularly more recently with Bacchus Marsh as well, when you were appointed there in 2019. I mean, how do you what's your gut feel, particularly after seeing a few rounds of the Bellarine Football League?
People often ask, so what league's better? How do you compare teams in different leagues? And it's an impossible question because I don't think you can. And different leagues have different styles. Northern Footy League is extremely physical. The Canberra League is very physical. You get a lot of ex-rugby players that can certainly tackle and like to hit hard. From what I have seen of the Bellarine League, it's a lot more open, bigger spaces by virtue of, look at Shell Road, how big our ground is. So it's a lot more running, and that's what we're trying to do at Ocean Grove. And then the Ballarat League is, that's a different beast altogether. There's some great history up there with some big clubs and some huge rivalries. Yeah, to compare them, I mean, it's all football, but they are still quite different.
And the two people that have had a bit to do with your career in terms of not only coaching and playing, but more recently, obviously, Brendan McCartney with the leadership sort of mentor role. But tell us about your continued involvement with Gary Ramsey and how's he shaped your coaching and playing career, Gary Ramsey?
I caught up with Gaz only a few weeks ago. We had an old boys reunion back in Melbourne for a club that we're at 15 years ago. Look, Gaz, what I learned from Gaz wasn't actually about football coaching. It was about probably leadership and leading people. Gary probably didn't even realise the way he carried himself. Players just wanted to play for him. And he loved his players, probably at a time when it probably wasn't the said word that coaches wouldn't necessarily say, I love you as a player. Coaches were sort of, fire and brimstone kind of yelling to get players up and about, whereas he was very much talk rationally, care for your players, look after them during the week, and they'll look after you on a Saturday. And that's probably what I've taken from his coaching. I had a career coach that was the same way. And I know that got the best out of me. And that's probably, probably how I operate with my coaching style as well. It's coach the person and not the player. Yeah, and then you'll get the best out of them.
You've got a career in finance. I believe that one of the companies you worked at, I actually took out some insurance as part of my media business through Gallagher, and
Yeah.
because I was asked to do that with the role that I had. And you're a senior account executive, but obviously your role now that you're working with Steadfast, and obviously I suppose the main point is here, how's that role sort of changed, I suppose, since COVID? It's in the last 12 months. What were you doing pre-COVID in that role? Were you working from an office, obviously working from home last year, and what's the situation around your work in 2021?
Yeah, it's funny. So prior to COVID, I was on planes once a fortnight easily, sometimes once a week going interstate somewhere. Since then, I think what COVID has taught us is we can do this. We can talk to people at the drop of a hat anywhere in Australia. And my role recently has gone from state-based to national-based, and sort of looking at that going, geez, there's going to be a lot of travel here. But realistically, I'm probably going to do less than what I was 2 years ago because of this, because we know that we can operate this way, and people almost expect that that you're not going to be doing the face-to-face, walk in the front door kind of visit anymore. It's going to be quick and punchy and over using technology.
And I suppose that's good for you being a young father, that you can see your kids a lot more because of that.
Absolutely, yeah. That's interesting when I'm on here and my young fella I might walk in behind and wave to whoever's on the on the screen and pop back out again. I think a lot of people I deal with know my kids now, so it's that personal touch that I think everybody now has learnt to live with. Where that you think that 2 years ago, I probably would have broken out in sweats if that had happened in a meeting somewhere. But it's all par for the course now.
Now, I actually got to meet you, and I went to your home, and one of the things I remember was that I walked into your house, and we were going to go down to the Oval at Leopold. That's not far, but I understand you're moving to Ocean Grove. But one of the things I did was when I walked in, I think there was some little cars on the ground, like little, matchbox cars or whatever, and I nearly slipped over. It was quite funny, and it was because probably I saw those Hawks jumpers, but also too, Pete, there was I think I saw a picture of you recently when you came back to Banyule. There was a bit of blue in your hair. What was all that about?
Bit of blue.
Yeah. Did someone dye your hair or something like that?
Actually done about blue.
And put something on the website. I think I got a photo of it somewhere.
Yeah, right. I don't know.
Was it after a Mad Monday celebration or something?
I can't remember. Okay. You've got me there. Yeah, no, you throw me. Yeah. Tell you what, though, I'm going to pull you up on the Matchbox because Noah will have a crack at you. But they're Hot Wheels.
Hot Wheels. All right, Hot Wheels. Yeah. I didn't get those right. They weren't labelled, but there you go. But it was almost when we caught up, he was almost going to eat the football when we went down to the.
Yeah. So, no, he's it's a slow burn with Noah. It's funny. I was so into sport, footy and cricket as a boy, and he comes and goes. He chooses when he wants to get the footy out and when he doesn't. And it's been really fun the last 12 months spending all that time with him and just watching and seeing what floats his boat. But he always comes back to Hot Wheels.
Now, obviously, when you were coaching Bacchus Marsh, you were making the long trips, and it's obviously shorter to go to coach Ocean Grove now. But is Ocean Grove ready for Pete Davey to land in as a resident now? Is it big enough for Pete Davey?
He's like, I'm sure it is. Yeah, we can't wait to get in. I think we're hopefully about 3 months away from the house being built. Yeah, we're sort of counting the days down until we get in there. It's going to be fantastic.
Well, love the fact that you've joined us on the Stoned Heen View to talk about all those things with what's going ahead. One thing I want to wrap up before I go is, what are the goals this year? Not so much compared to last year. And is your average age at Ocean Grove on the senior list, is it younger than what it was last year?
It's certainly younger. Yeah. So we thought that we'd be a little bit older this year. But then when we looked at round one, we debuted 4 guys. We debuted another 3 on the weekend, and then I think we had 4 guys over 24. Whereas I think if we'd gone ahead with our round one team last year, we did have a couple of guys over 30. So look from an average age perspective, it's probably very similar. I think we're still very young. From a goals perspective, we just want to improve every week. I know that's probably cliche, but there's a lot of education that we're doing with these guys. We've got the video out every week going through reviews of the games and reviewing the side that we're coming up against, which was obviously difficult for round one. We couldn't do it round one, but the guys are really buying into that, and they're starting to see things on the video that we were pointing out in the beginning that they didn't really have a clue about, and now they're seeing it themselves. So we think the increase in football IQ and what we're putting out on the ground is going to increase astronomically over the coming weeks, and by the end of the year, we'll be a very good, hardened football team. So I think the future for us is really bright. Yeah.
Has Macca given you a call lately, or you keep in touch with Macca just to update on how?
He wished me luck before round one. Yeah. So and look, I made a comment to him that that we are really young, and I actually went through the ages of the side that we had for round one, and he just said that's fantastic because you'll play finals with young guys that care. And that's what we've got. We've got a lot of young guys, but we've got older players as well. But everyone cares. Everyone buys into what we're doing and cares where we're going.
Well, I must admit, despite the loss against Torquay, and they're a top opposition, there was certainly some promising aspects to the game plan that I saw. So I hope yourself, Pete, going into this role in coaching post-COVID, particularly with Ocean Grove, and now, in a few months, you'll be a resident of the town, that you can work your way in, and, there'll be an upward trend, and, finals, and then, maybe premierships come along the journey. And I think you've proven that as a coach, obviously interstate, and then in Melbourne. So, you're definitely a sought after coach, and who knows, you might even get a tap on the shoulder from Clarko at some stage, being a Hawk supporter.
I'm very happy at Ocean Grove. Very happy.
Well, thank you for joining us on the Stoned Heen View podcast for episode 53. And we really appreciate your time and look forward to your involvement this year through 2021 as the Ocean Grove senior coach.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me again, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Not a problem. We can get in touch with the Stoned Heen View at any time. You can type it in onto Facebook, onto Instagram. Our podcast is also available on Apple Podcasts, also Spotify, and the launching platform is Podbean. So check us out there, write us a review. We've also got the business edition as well. Stoned Heen View has also got a YouTube channel and a Twitter account at Stoned Heen View. So until next time, the Stoned Heen View podcast, we're actually going to have 2 guests on next time. We'll talk to you soon on the Stoned Heen View for episode 54. And thanks to Pete Davey for his support and joining us on this week's episode. And we'll see you soon next week. Thank you.